bleed green? Are you an ultimate Eagles football fan? Well, you're in the right place. This is Birds 365, hosted by the new Mac and Mac, Jody McDonald and John McMullen.
Here we go!
Who collectively have covered and talked about more than 50 plus years of Eagles football. Kick off your day with Birds 365. You'll get debate.
We love to argue.
You'll get the real story from inside the locker room. And you'll hear from some of the great football minds from around the region. You're about to become an Eagles insider. Get in the game. Join Jody Mack and Johnny Mack and join the football community that flocks to Birds 365. Birds 365 starts right now.
Welcome to the NFL. Let's go! Let's go! Go! And a good bye-week Wednesday, Birds fans. Thanks for streaming in early with us here. I'm Birds 365. You got Mac and Mac, McMullen, and McDonald here to hang with you. We now have to show a little patience. We've got a lot of inside emotions about the Philadelphia Eagles, their start they're off to, the chances for this year, and then hurry up and wait because every team in the league gets a bye, and this happens to be the Eagles' bye week. And I think it comes at an opportune time for a couple of reasons. Number one, I always like middle of the schedule. I know some teams would prefer it a little bit later. I think it was Jim Foss who once told me, Jody, don't forget to include the preseason. If you want it right in the middle, make sure you add those preseason weeks because that's part of the season as well. Yeah, I don't know if I ever bought that, but Fossil told it to me, so I've always remembered it. Right in the middle of the season, about as good as it can get. So it's an opportune time for the Eagles, and I'll ask John about the injured player the Eagles have and what the extra couple of days they'll get here could mean to them. But, J-Mac, here's where I want to start. I ran this by my WIP listeners last night, and it comes down to confidence level. The Eagles have to have their own confidence level, but we relate with the fans, and thanks to those who have streamed in early here today, I'm more worried about their confidence level, Eagle Nation confidence level. I'm going to ask you to back it up, back it up 2 months ago. Go back to September 8th. As compared to November 8th, where we are today. That would be right before they went to New England to take on the Patriots to open up the season. Your confidence level at that point. The offseason is finished. They've made the moves they've had to make. They've had to make a bunch more since for varying reasons, and Howie Roseman has been pretty good at that. But the roster that they came into the season with, their positioning against everybody else in the National Football League, the schedule they were scheduled to play against. 2 months later, the results are now in. If you had confidence level A at that point, now 2 months later with everything that's transpired is confidence level B. Is it exactly where you thought it would be? Is it slightly better than you thought it would be? Is it markedly better than you thought it would be? Is it slightly less than maybe you thought it would be or markedly less? How would you compare what your confidence level was just before the season started to where it sits here evaluating the 8-1 Eagles heading into their bye?
For me personally, more confidence. I thought they were going to struggle a little bit more with all the changes. We talked about a lot in the offseason, 5 defensive starters, new coordinators. I thought there would be a hiccup. There was one with the Jets, really more of a play than a game. They didn't play well, but they lost the game on one play. So I would say from my perspective, they've been better than I expected them to be. I expected them to move slowly along. I knew they were going to be a really good team, that they're just too talented, but I thought it would be they would grow as the season went on, and they pretty much hit the ground running and have the best record in the NFL. And they're probably disappointed because they're not 9-0 at the bye, and they should be, to be honest. So yeah, I think it's been better than anyone could have expected. But we talk about Eagle Nation, they're probably a little bit more disappointed than, because they don't have the style points. So, I think they're two different. From my personal perspective, yeah, much better than I thought it would be. Maybe I thought maybe they'd have 2 losses, something like that. They have 1. But I've been pretty impressed with how seamless it's been with the new coaches, the new defensive starters. They've had to go about it a different way. They're obviously struggling in pass coverage, so they've had to go about it a different way. But it's been pretty impressive.
I'll tell you where I'm at, and then I just give you the quick read on the responses I got over the 3+ hours I had it out there as a question for my listeners. I'm with you. I'm slightly more confident at this stage than I was going into the season. Not massively more confident because they have some issues, and we discussed them yesterday. We'll discuss them today. We'll discuss them leading all the way up to the Chiefs game, things that the Eagles could be better in. But A.J. Brown is arguably the best receiver in the league. I guess Tyreek Hill has better numbers. But it's damn close between the two, and I knew AJ was going to be good. I remember the day that AJ Brown, the Monday after, or was it? They cut the deal on Friday, so we probably did a Friday Birds 365. It was
I was day 1 of the draft, so it was probably Thursday night.
So we came here on Friday, and man, I got crushed both here on Birds 365 and on social media. And you were right there with me. I said I have him just outside of the top 10 wide receivers in the league. Because I went to him, here's how I would rank the wide receivers coming into, before you ever put an Eagle uniform on, what he had done in Tennessee, I had him like 11th or 12th. He's certainly been a top 10 wide receiver since he got here to Philadelphia. He is far exceeded what I thought he was going to do. Coming into the season, certainly I would have had him as a top 10 wide receiver. Borderline top 5, maybe 5th. He's number 2 at worst. If he's not 2, he's 1. And I think he's had just as good a season as Tyreek Hill. So, yeah, he's overachieved. And the other one that both you and I were fans of, but we couldn't have even believed that he was going to be as good as he has been. I didn't know Jalen Carter was going to come in here and be a dominant player his first half season in the NFL. I thought he'd be good. I thought he'd be able to step right in and make a difference. He's one of the best defensive tackles in the NFL, and I didn't know that was happening. So if you did, then you want to pat yourself on the back. Oh, he's good. I knew he'd be a top 3 or 4 tackle in the NFL. All right, you're smarter than me. But he has been that good. So it's an individual player thing. They have 2 guys that have just been significantly better than I thought they would be. Add that to the couple of phases of football where they might be still having to figure some stuff out. Yeah, I've got the Eagles as slightly, just slightly, but confidence is pretty damn high to begin with. So to be anything higher than the level I had at the beginning of the year is a pretty good spot for Nick Sirianni to be in right about now.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, we say it all the time. We're at 27 consecutive regular season weeks. Pretty impressive run. This is the glory days of modern Philadelphia Eagles football. Sometimes I think people don't recognize that when they're in the midst of it, but this is not normal to be this consistent in a league pretty much defined by parity. Back to the days of Pete Rozelle, that's what they crave. That's what they want in this league. So every fan base thinks they have a chance, yada, yada, yada. Everybody loses. Everybody has bad weeks. So do the Eagles, but they usually find a way to win these games, even when they don't have their A game. And that to me defines, I always bring up the baseball analogies, that the starting pitcher that grinds through when he doesn't have his best stuff, that's the Philadelphia Eagles. They find ways to win games more than anybody else. And that, I think, is a trait. And I always bring up Denny Green as well. Told me back in the day, you brought up Jim Bossel, I'll bring up Denny. Said winning's a habit, and so was losing on the other side of that coin. And they have a habit now, and they just win, and it's pretty impressive to watch.
All right, so I'm going to go devil's advocate here because we both just said we believe that the confidence level in this team should be even higher than where it was before the season started, which was at a pretty damn high level to begin with. I'm going to evoke the name of the 2022 Minnesota Twins. Minnesota Vikings. They could have made that same statement that you just made, Johnny Mac. We just find ways to win. Check our record. We just find ways to win. Yet you and I both sat here and go, Minnesota is tough to understand. They're tough to figure. Don't know how they're doing it, how they continue to win games. When they're bad, they're putrid, but they just continue to sneak win after win after win after win after win. We didn't necessarily believe winning was a habit with the Minnesota Twins. Why is this Eagle team better than that? I keep saying Twins. I'm in a baseball. You got me in a baseball mode, McMullen. Minnesota Vikings last year, who nobody, at least we weren't surprised when they went down week one. You didn't really like the Giants either. Somebody had to win that game, right?
Somebody, yeah. But that ruined the New York Giants, by the way. But go,
yeah, exactly.
Continue.
So how do we?
Well, the Eagles have more talent, but that was the issue with Minnesota. Minnesota was a very good offensive team last year, but defensively was the issue, and it was an abject. This is one of the worst defenses I've ever seen, literally. They couldn't stop anybody, and a lot of it was related to Ed Donatel. And I kind of said coming into this season, Minnesota might be better. Minnesota will probably be better, but they'll have a worse record because they sort of got lucky and got all those one-score wins. And all of a sudden, here we are. Now, they lost their quarterback, so they're not going to be better. But if their quarterback didn't get hurt, they are better. They had a bad start, but all of a sudden, the defense is better, even though they don't have a ton of talent because they have a much better coordinator. And they're a better overall team. I said the same thing about the Eagles, but on a different level because the Eagles have more talent. I didn't think the Eagles were going to win 14 games again. They might. they might do it. But I said they could be a better team even if they don't hit that same number. They have a more difficult schedule. They're right in the midst of the difficult part, all that kind of stuff. It's just, again, in a parity-driven league, it's difficult to be that consistent. But, the Eagles build the right way. They do. They build the right way. And they have one of the best offensive lines. They have one of the best defensive fronts, and they have a great quarterback. And if you have those three things, you're going to be in a lot of games, Jody. You're going to have an opportunity. Is the ball going to bounce your way every single week? Probably not. But you're going to be in most games if you have those three things, and they have those three things.
Certainly have that going for them. All right, one more note before we punch up our first guest. Mike Gill is going to jump in like he usually does at this time on Wednesday mornings. This is our buddy Ruben Frank stat, and Rube comes up with some of these things, and it's got to be a lot of research behind him because I don't even think along those lines, and he looks them up. This millennium, John McMullen, which means from 2000 to 2023, how many teams do you think have started the season either 9-0 or 8-1 in their first 9 games? So we're looking at 23 seasons worth. How many teams do you think were either 8-1 or 9-0?
Say that again. Overall, or what?
Their first 9 games of the season, from the 20 to the 2000 season to this year, the 2023 season. So 23 years of seasonal results. How many teams do you think started either 8-1 or 9-0 in their first 9 games?
In their first 9 games, I don't know, probably
I'll put you out of your misery. There have been 40 teams that started the year either 8-1 or 9-0. And there's only one this year. That would be the Philadelphia Eagles, because everybody else has got at least 2
I'm
losses.
surprised it's that high, but
It's
yeah,
40 in 23 years. Now it's 23 years. It's not like
that's a long period, but that's that's difficult to do. I'm surprised it's that high.
there have been 40 teams. Of the 40, how many teams do you think in those good starts of either 8-1 or 9-0 didn't win a game by at least 14 points in that season during that time frame where they went 8-1 or 9-0?
Probably very few. I'm going to say under 5. Generally, you're dominant.
Keep going down from 5.
2.
Keep going down from 2.
1.
That would be 1. And that would be the 2023 Philadelphia Eagles.
Yeah, generally you're dominant when you're winning that many games. Yeah, I get it. Now, how many teams have gone 8-1 or 9-0 for 2 consecutive seasons?
That I do not know.
Do we have that? Do we have that?
I do not have that. But last year's team, including the Philadelphia, because you're right, they were 8-1. They had blowout wins. This year, they have not. They have not had one win, a final score that they were up by 2 touchdowns or more. They're the only team this millennium who's gotten off to this good a start record-wise and not had a blowout win. It tells you, like you said, when you were running down the confidence level thing, Al Davis's favorite line, just win, baby. That's what they do. They just win. They don't always step on teams' throats. They don't always blow people out. They don't make it easy on you if you're watching the game, but they've won 8 out of 9
I'm trying
games.
to go through the games in my head, and I'm trying to go through because there's so many garbage points in the NFL. New England was a tough game, and it wasn't pretty. Minnesota was a game. Minnesota was down 20 in that game. I don't think it was as close as the final score. They dominated in Tampa Bay. They've struggled both games with Washington. I never got the feeling the Rams were even in it when they got going in the third quarter. I never got the feeling the defense was so dominant.
But the Ram game, you said early, did I sitting here watching? You were out there in LA.
No, early, yeah. The first half, I was like, oh, God, Cooper Kupp. Yeah, first half. And then they just took over in the third quarter. Miami, they were pretty impressive. In Dallas, they played just a god-awful fourth quarter, but they, for 3 quarters, I thought they were pretty damn good. So I just went through it off the bat. A couple dominant games. Only Washington, they played poorly against Washington as for what they should do. But, division rival, all that kind of stuff. Obviously, they had trouble with the Jets defense, but the Jets defense is really good. The problem there is they didn't turn over Zach Wilson, which is you got to be able to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So those are the 3 games I'd look at and say, maybe could have been better. But the fact that one's a division rival kind of mitigates it. And I'll give you one bad game in 9 games in the NFL. Kansas City's had them, Buffalo's had them, whoever you like, Cincinnati, Baltimore, everybody's had bad games. So,
and the Eagles have had 1 less than everybody else because they only have 1 loss. And that is something to certainly hang your hat on. But they have not been a team to blow out a squad. And, hey, last year in the playoffs, they blew out 2 opponents. So we know that they're certainly.
Well, what's the number? 14? So you got to be over 14? What was the number? Right. So, what does that really mean? Because they beat the Dolphins, who might be the best team on the schedule to date, them or Dallas, I would guess. They beat them by 14 points.
Right. More than 4. And the reason why that's a legit number is that's more than 2 full scores. Even if you push the 16 possibility to the 8-point potential touchdowns, 14 is your regular 2 touchdowns. So it's more than a 2 touchdown victory. They haven't had one. And doesn't matter because you're 8-1. Standings are the most important statistic of them all, but they just haven't blown teams out this year. And hopefully it's not something that we come back to if the Eagles get picked off somewhere along the way in the postseason and go, yeah, why didn't they blow teams out during the regular season? Why couldn't they just step on somebody and kick them when they were down? You got to be able to do that. I hope that's something that doesn't come back for us to be able to look at. And one more thing while we're waiting for Mike Gill to join us. A lot of talk about the Detroit Lions. Watched a bunch of the talking head shows yesterday, and they're trying to figure out, because it's quote-unquote midway point of the season, who are the best teams in the NFL. And everybody's including that Eagles in the conversation, but they're going down the road of, and watch for those Detroit Lions. They've got an easy schedule the second half of the year. They've only got 2 losses. I know they haven't been in the playoffs forever, so we don't usually think of them, but wow, how about those Detroit Lions? I got one question about the Detroit Lions, John. They win opening week in Kansas City, the Thursday night affair. That's a big win for them, 21-20 to win in Kansas City while they're celebrating. Not trying to downplay that win, but it was now 2 months ago. It was a while ago.
Well, they didn't have Travis Kelce, I believe.
Right. Kansas City without Travis Kelce for the opening game. Very good point. Thank you for adding that to the mix. Who have they beaten since? Because we have to listen to that all the time here. Who the Eagles beat? Who the Eagles beat? The Eagles have played a cupcake schedule. We heard it last year. We've heard it to an extent again this year. Last 2 weeks, 2 of the last 3 weeks, Eagles have beaten the Dolphins and the Cowboys, who are both teams with very good records. Who the hell is Detroit beaten after that opening game victory against Kansas City?
But that's not the point. The point is, and they got waxed by Baltimore. I mean, just destroyed. I think Baltimore might be the best team in the NFL. I'm starting to lean towards that, but that's the whole point. They have the easy schedule, so it's not about who's the better team for me. I think the Eagles are the better team. I'm just talking about the number 1 seed. You can't hiccup because they have the easy schedule. Now they have a difficult game at the Chargers this week. If they win that game, and they may very well lose it, then I think they can really make some hay. With the Bears. The Bears are not, I don't even think the Bears are playing at this point anymore. They want to get either the first and second overall pick or the second and third overall pick. So I think they're in full tank mode.
Yeah, but hold on. Let me ask you about that. And Gil's ready to go. We'll get to it in a second. Not really. They went out and added a key defensive player and signed him to a contract extension. Tank mode, you and I have discussed this before. It's less in the NFL than it is in some other spots. General managers tank. Players don't tank. Coaches don't tank. The guy who's putting the roster together tanks. And they didn't do that. They went out and got a better they upgraded their roster going into the trade deadline. So I don't think they're in tank mode.
Well, I when I say tank mode, as you point out, I'm talking NFL tank mode, not NBA tank mode. Like, you need good players. Ryan Poles has to figure out a way to convince these guys he deserves his job as well. So, and he's got to build up the team for next year. But an edge rusher can only do so much, and that's a very good player. But when you're not playing your quarterback and you're playing, what's his name? I always screw up.
Tyson Bagent.
Tyson and Tyler. Tyler.
No, because Fields is legitimately hurt. It's not because they.
Well, he was legitimately hurt. Is he still legitimately hurt?
Yeah, he can't even grip a football. He busted up his thumb, his throwing thumb.
No, I know the first few weeks, but now there were talk he was going to play this week, and they got the short week, and now they're saying he might not play this week. I don't think you're going to see.
Are you suggesting they're going to sit Fields the entirety of the rest of the year to make sure they lose games and finish? That somehow his thumb's going to get worse in November and December?
I think they're being very, very cautious, and you probably. Again, in the modern NFL, it's not like the old days. You have to sort of have medical evidence for doing certain things as opposed to just completely shutting somebody down. But you can work some things in there as well. And by the way, they're still losing games with Justin Fields. So it's not, I think overall the Bears want to be as high in the draft as possible. That's all I'm saying. As high as humanly possible. And they want to be as close to 1 and 2 as humanly possible. And they're not going to go out of their way to win games. And if there's any decision to be made on a given week, they're going to err on the side of caution. That's sort of an NFL tank. It's not Sam Hinkie. It's not, oh, Matt Geiger helped me win a game. Let's get him the hell out of here as quickly as humanly possible. It's a little bit different, but it does exist. And when there is a slight decision, they're going to err on the side of caution. And they stink anyway. So Detroit.
That's your best argument.
Yeah.
I'm not buying in what you're selling, but whether you got Justin Fields, you give your best effort, put forth your best roster, they can still lose anyway because they're just not that good.
Yeah, they just stink to begin with, and so do the Packers. And Minnesota's got players, but Josh Dobbs is going to be the quarterback, and that's an issue. Even though he had a great story, and that was a tremendous job by him. I mean, long term, it's still Josh Dobbs. They're going to win a lot of games. But I don't think, even if the Eagles have to go to Detroit, I don't think that people are going to be fearful of that. But you'd rather play at home is obvious from the Eagles' perspective.
And, oh, by the way, the Bears will help themselves a lot with their positioning in the draft this weekend because they're playing the Carolina Panthers. And they have the Panthers' number 1 pick. And as of right now, the team with the worst record in the National Football League is the Carolina Panthers. So they can stick another loss on them. Yeah, it's going to hurt their own draft status by getting a win. But one way or the other, they're going to take a loss to the 2 picks that they have. I think the Bears will win this week. And I don't know if they're going to roll over as much as you think. All right, Johnny and I got off on a tangent. That's my bad. I apologize. The guy I apologize to is Mike Gill, because he's looking at me. He's got some kind of a nice T-shirt on. He's look, if he could reach through and hit me, I think he'd punch me. But I'm glad that this thing is virtual. So we get the tough guy, Mike Gill from the Sports Bash down at Shore, joining us next here on Birds 365.
Go to get your game on. Go for the beers. Go for the cheers. Go for the hit and the hits. Go for the stakes and the stakes. Go to get your parlay on. Go to get your party on. Go for the scene. Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean. Visit theoceanac.com to plan your visit.
At Pond Lehocky, we've recovered billions of dollars for our clients, and we're confident we can do the same for you. With over 250 years of combined courtroom experience, we've helped over 100,000 injured clients obtain some of the largest settlements in Pennsylvania. One conversation is all it takes to help you and your family get back on track. If you've been injured in an accident, give Pond Lehocky a call.
They're carving them up and good play calling along the way. First and goal at the 6.
On the field of life, First Trust Bank is there for you.
Champions on 3. 1, 2, 3.
Because Philadelphia dreams deserve a Philadelphia bank.
We're here to show you a better way to spend your state income taxes and get the money to where it's needed the most to the thousands of qualified kids.
What we like about Blocks is they really know where the need is.
This program ensures that their dollars come 100% into these kids for their tuition assistance.
If you are able, Blocks makes the EITC piece go very quickly and very smoothly.
Turn your PA state tax liability into need-based scholarships and receive a 90% tax credit.
Since 1977, it's always been about you, the community, at Rafferty Subaru. And through the Subaru Love Promise, we prove we care by supporting charities like So Good Now.
Sogano helps kids in under-resourced areas by connecting them with student athletes to serve as mentors. We remove barriers so athletes can help youth in the corners of our communities where light and love are needed most.
When you choose Rafferty Subaru, you help organizations like So Good Now.
It's all about you at Rafferty Subaru.
Do you stream on a Roku, Fire Stick, Google TV, or Apple TV? Now you can watch 6ABC 24/7 with the 6ABC Philadelphia streaming app.
And the big story on Action News?
Search 6ABC Philadelphia and start streaming today.
EAGLES, Eagles.
You got the Mac and Mac guys here on Birds 365. We are joined by our usual Wednesday bud from down the shore. That would be Mike Gill of the Sports Bash 97.3 ESPN. And this week's T-shirt is
Princeton Tigers, man. I'm feeling smart this morning. Bye week. Did a little extra studying for today.
A little self-scouting on Mike Gill.
Yep. Gotta see how to tweak and change my content.
Ivy League intelligence. With the Princeton.
I've been to the
Tigers,
Princeton campus many a times up there in the Trenton area. So Ewing, Trenton, Princeton.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's
very nice spot. Very nice spot.
It's solid 10 miles north of Trenton.
Yeah.
You got to go.
I did the Trenton area.
Okay.
Out that way. You go out 206 if you're coming from like the, Hamilton out that way or whatever. There's a bunch of ways to get there. But yeah. Princeton Tigers, that's the shirt today.
I like the orange. And yeah, if you went there, you're probably a pretty smart guy. We would be 0 for 3 on Ivy League attendance here on Birds 365.
It's an ode to college basketball season starting, Jody Mack.
Really?
I'm a big.
You go back to Pete Carroll? Is that what you're rolling out here?
They made a run of the Sweet 16 last year. I mean, they made a run of the. I'm a big hoop head, man. I was up late last night watching.
Gonna backdoor you to death.
Yeah, I was watching UC Irvine and San Jose. I'm a big hoop head, man.
Boy, I got to tell you, I'm negative Nelly because they have ruined the regular season of college basketball.
Yeah, but I like the early season like this time. Once they get into like the conference play, I think you're right. But this early season stuff, by the way, the reason I like it early, there's a lot of money to win because the lines makers have no idea.
Well, there we go.
Doing,
yeah,
so.
There we go. We found out the truth. All right. Now I accept.
I cleaned up last night. These odds makers they can't put the lines high enough for some of these games. Like Creighton last night, I get minus 36 and I'm laughing. They win by 51. I said they can't put the line high enough for some of these games early on. No. Although a nice win for LaSalle over Drexel. I watched a lot of that game last night.
I didn't. I should have. I was watching the Fly Guys instead.
That was at 10:30. The Fly Guy game was at 10:30. LaSalle was a 7 game.
Okay. So what the hell was I? I watched the Rangers. They're off to a pretty damn good start. We're up. Well, I promise we're getting back to full one. Just 1 second. I do need to make this point though. College basketball. You brought up college basketball. Women's college basketball. Which, by the way. The women's championship game this past year outrated the World Series.
I saw that.
Television ratings.
Is that true?
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
The women's college basketball got a higher number than the World Series did. Aggregate across that.
I will interject. I will interject this with football and bring it back there. I said this on my show yesterday. Monday, I watched the Sixers game. I then flipped to your Jets game, and in 10 minutes, I said, I'm not watching this product. No. The NFL this year has been so bad, unwatchably bad with some of these teams.
I think it's been that way for years.
It has been, but this year, John, I feel like there's so many bad teams, and they keep matching up against each other. And now the windows are spread so thin that you're getting a standalone game on Thursday. They give you the London game. Your 1 o'clock window has nothing to watch, nothing. And then at 4:25, you're hoping to get one game. And then half the time, the Jets are on in prime time. If it's not the Jets, it's the Raiders. If it's not the Raiders, it's the freaking Bears. I don't want the Raiders ever on prime time. Nobody cares about the Raiders anymore. Nobody cares ever about the Raiders. They got to stop feeding us the Raiders. They keep giving us Raiders. They got this week, you got Bears and Panthers.
Well, that's where you start getting to this time of the season, and you have clearly defined awful teams, and you got the schedule on Thursday night. Like, who wants to watch this game?
Who wants to watch the Bears Panthers if they're both 8-1? Nobody.
Well, that
Nobody
I
wants to
disagree
see
with.
those two
That
teams.
I disagree with. Well,
Yeah.
if Chicago's 8-1,
yeah, I
that's
get
a
it.
big deal.
Chicago
That is a
hasn't
big
been
deal.
good ever. Since 85, the Bears have not been good. What television?
No, they had a couple runs. They had the Rex Grossman run.
Well, what TV executive says, you know what? Prime time. Let me go with the Bears. They're going to be good.
Everybody. The Bears are huge.
The Bears
I
have a,
know.
pretty,
Market.
they have a pretty big national following, Mac.
Yeah.
I know they haven't been good. You're
Now,
right.
yeah, you're right. Right
they're
now, they're a
static, but-
disaster. I pick on them all the time, but that is a marquee franchise.
I get the Jets thing. They thought they were getting Rodgers, and now they don't have him. That's painful to watch. They're in the prime time every week. Every game they're on prime time.
That's not true. I suffered through Jets Giants at 1 o'clock 2 weeks ago. So
That was a
not every week.
All right,
They're
they're
prime
on
time
at
against
the
them.
max amount of
You're
time.
right. I agree with you. It's a bad product overall. I agree. I've been talking about that for years.
Yet they're the only television product that is not declining. Every other one is, except for the NFL.
yeah.
So
The
you can
ratings
bitch
are
and
great.
moan all you want, Gil.
Yeah.
Ryan Goodell laughs at you as he cleans
Yeah.
the stuff
I
out of
know.
his eye.
And
to
guess
Mike
what?
Gill.
Guess what? They're going to add teams in Germany and London, and so that they can have a 9:30 game every single week, so that they can get more money from Apple or Hulu or somebody to stream that game every Sunday at 9:30.
You're probably right. All right, but you diverted away. I wanted to get this point in because I want to keep people from looking stupid. I watched women's college basketball season opener. LSU won the championship last year, did this unbelievable number. Got beat in their opening game by Colorado.
Yeah.
And people, when Deion Sanders won his first game, had Coach Prime in the college football playoffs. Oh my God, the
How's
job
that
that he's
working
doing.
out?
It's historic. It's iconic what Coach Prime has done. He's lost 5 of his last 6 games or whatever ridiculous number it is. Don't do that with the women's basketball. Don't be stupid enough to, Colorado's now going to make a run. No, they jumped up and they surprised the national champion in game 1. Yeah, so did your football team and then fell off the face of the earth. So don't make that stupid mistake. And one quick jet note. Zach Wilson is not only going to get himself out of the league, he's going to get Robert Saleh out of the league, and he's going to get Eagle underling Joe Douglas run out of the league too, because they refuse to admit the guy sucks. Never,
Can
ever
they
did
get
anyone
Nathaniel
ever
Hackett
say
thrown out?
he defends like Sirianni defends some of his players. Saleh does this every week. You watch him. We're stuck watching him in prime time. I watch every single snap. He stinks.
Terrible.
By the way, I
say-
can't believe this. We're 38 minutes into the show. We haven't mentioned Carson Wentz is back. I think Carson Wentz might be
Wentz should be on the goddamn Jets.
Yes,
instead
I
of
don't get
stupid
it.
Zach Wilson.
Yeah.
The mindset is fascinating to me, John, Jody. It is fascinating that you are employed by an NFL team. You know how many people watching this or just walking around would yearn for the opportunity to say, I am going to sign Tommy DeVito and actually start him. You're telling me you can't make a phone call to a guy at the grocery store that used to throw, that has more ability to actually get a play call that's a pass than Tommy DeVito. It's amazing to me where they find some of these guys to play that position. And yet Carson Wentz, who, listen, I know everybody in this town laughs and think, you're telling me that Carson Wentz isn't more equipped to play quarterback than Tommy DeVito is, or any guy the Jets are throwing out. I don't know how you live with yourself saying we are going to take that position and find the shittiest guy we can find and put him there.
I'll give you 2 reasons why that might change, Mike, going forward. And it's an excellent point you're making. Josh Dobbs. Because they do. They get these guys and they think, oh, they were there in camp. They've been with us. They've been sitting in the meetings. That's the reason why they – and then they watch them actually go out in the field and go, oh, shoot, they can't do what we're asking them to do. You go get Josh Dobbs. You give him about 20 minutes to get ready. Goes out, wins a game for the Minnesota Vikings. So I think there's a better chance going forward that the NFL teams will go, yeah, maybe we should worry more about talent level than how long he's been in the building with us and sitting in meetings and the like. If he can't play, can't play. And he's not going to get better because we're running him through.
Yeah, I
meetings.
think, in a weird way, I think the Josh Dobbs things kind of hurts coaches a little bit because it kind of exposed that it's not, he's a rocket scientist, but it's not rocket science because, he didn't take one rep with the offense, not one rep.
No.
And he went out and won an NFL game just by making plays.
And by the way, Josh Dobbs isn't any good either, but he's good enough to just get you through a game because he has NFL talent. Is he a starting quarterback week to week? No, but he at least has NFL ability.
Yeah, I'm with you. You can't throw Tommy DeVito out there. Now, Zach Wilson, I mean, look, the Jets aren't the only team that likes Zach Wilson. So this
listen, Zach Wilson.
John, ask me how much I care about that.
No, I know you don't. That's not my point.
And anyone who has any emotion toward the New York Jets should care zero about the fact that other teams like them.
That's not my point.
The Jets is, and they continue to defend him, and they continue to put him out there, and he stinks on ice.
My point is, Mike brought up Tommy DeVito. That Tommy DeVito, who doesn't have NFL level talent,
none.
That to me is different.
That's like Ben DiNucci. You get Ben DiNucci in an NFL game. Are you kidding me? Tommy DeVito. Wilson at least has NFL arm, NFL arm strength. Like, he has some NFL talent. Their offensive line's a disaster.
So I'll ask both of you. Why didn't the Jets go get Josh Dobbs?
That's a great question.
Yeah, well, they don't want to, that's the difficult part of it from a GM's perspective. We talk about it all the time. When you draft a guy, especially at that position, when you draft a guy that high, you're kind of hitched to him.
Really? San Francisco hitched to Trey Lance?
They weren't, and I give Kyle
Shanahan, organization.
Yeah, Kyle Shanahan's got a bigger rope. John Lynch has got a bigger rope. Like, if you're Joe Douglas, you can't do that. You can't do that.
Yeah, but he's
if you're Ryan Pohl,
the rope he's using.
But that's something to talk about with the owner and how owners do business. And, there are certain guys for years, it was Belichick, and even he's got a shelf life, it seems. There are certain guys here with Howie Roseman, obviously, who have longer rope. And I talk about it all the time on this show, Jody and Mike. Howie's one of the big advantages, Howie's great at his job, but he does have a big advantage in that he can afford to make mistakes.
True.
Other guys can't afford to make big mistakes, or they're shown the door immediately.
Well, the most amazing thing to me is two things. One, I don't understand how somebody drafts a player and then consistently they make a mistake and then consistently keep making the mistake. Instead of getting out in front of it and saying, I made a mistake, gaining the respect of the fans.
Exactly right.
And saying, hey, we made a mistake. We're going to move on. Instead of,
you know what? I will say this about San Francisco. If Brock Purdy didn't turn into Brock Purdy and won 13 straight games or whatever he won before he lost, they would have stuck with Trey Lance. And they would have, in other words, if they didn't hit the lottery and win a bunch of games with a 7th round pick, they would have said, oh, we gotta keep going back to Trey. We gotta give him another chance.
I wonder if part of their mindset is they were winning games with a guy like Garoppolo, who's a nice player, not a special talent, and can afford to themselves say, we might get this quarterback at such a under market value price, and he's getting the job done. Let's just stick with him instead of, you know what I mean? Like, they have the ability to do that because it has shown that they've been able to win with a lesser talented guy.
Yeah, but I'm telling you,
Here's the other story, by the way. You guys mentioned Roseman. I tweeted this out the other night. Some guy came up to me and he said, "You know what, Mike Gill? I got to say something to you. You have always been a Howie Roseman guy. So good job by you." I said, "Yeah, thanks, man." And I said, I thought about this. Howie Roseman got embarrassed. He got humiliated, right? He got sent down the hallway and has never held it against this organization. Never held it against the fans. My point is this.
Yeah, trust
me. At any point, he could have said, "Mr. Lurie, you embarrassed me."
Howie likes to spike the football. I guarantee you, in the time that he was gone, if the New York Jets, for instance, that was his team growing up, if they called, he would have left.
Why he was gone. But now that he's back, he had every opportunity to say, "You know what you did to me 5 years ago? I'm out of here." And him running down the sideline the other night, I thought about that.
Got to get an offer. Now, if he got an offer, he would have been out. He would have been out. He would have been out the door.
Right. Well, you don't know, Mike, that any team has ever reached out and
now
off the record,
he also
said, "Howie, we need you to come take over our franchise." We just don't know that conversation's ever been had.
Which is amazing.
You're giving him credit for something you don't know has ever happened.
Which is
by
amazing
the way,
that nobody has reached out and tried to pluck him away, saying, "Yo, you know what that organization did to you? You don't remember what they did to you?" And
Jeffrey also gave him a raise and said, "Wink, wink. Let's see how this works out." It wasn't that cut and dry. He's the only guy who got a raise to move to the other side of the building.
To take a demotion.
Yeah.
It's an amazing, just saying, think about him running down the sidelines against the Cowboys the other night and think about where he was and what happened to him. And I thought to myself, this guy could leave at any time. He is widely regarded now as the best guy in this league, and it's not close.
And can I say something about? I want to say I want to say something about Joe Douglas real quick, because I freely admit I love Joe Douglas. Awesome dude. He has built one hell of a roster with the New York Jets. Everything else they have is ready to go. Well, the offensive line is not ready to go, but he's done a good job rebuilding that roster. But when you miss on the quarterback,
costing your job.
Yeah, everything else.
And the fact that they keep doubling down on this guy and defending this guy, that's what I'm talking about, John. I like Joe Douglas. I even like Salah as a guy. I'm still not sure how good
I don't like Salah,
but I like him as a guy. They're both dead men walking because they continue to put him out there and continue to defend him on a week in, week out basis. With anybody who watches him play, and you go, "Wow, this guy is bad. How is he continuing to go out there as their quarterback?" How did they not go out and get Josh Dobbs? Mike brought up Tommy DeVito. Tim Boyle is their backup quarterback. They keep activating him week in and week out. They got Trevor Siemian on the practice squad. They don't want to activate him because the crowd will know and go, Trevor, because they want Zach the hell out of there. And both the general manager and the coach continue to stick to their guns about that quarterback, and it's going to cost them both their jobs. Mark my words.
That'll be interesting. Hey, because it's funny, we were doing this on Monday looking at the coach of the year odds, and Salah's in there. I mean, the fact that they have 4 wins with Zach Wilson, the team, as you mentioned, that defense is Super Bowl level good. Like, they can win the Super Bowl because that defense is that good. In fact, I thought the Jets were going to the Super Bowl this year with Rodgers. I thought they were that good. Now, the fact is their offensive line stinks. How much does that affect Wilson? Who knows? He can't play. You've got to obviously say everybody's watching this kid and this team. Look, if Jaylen Hurts was struggling to this extent, the Eagles have a veteran player in Marcus Mariota that they could, like the Jets, if they had a Mariota, could say, all right, he can get us to 9-8 and get us into the playoffs. It's unbelievable to me that they allowed it to get to this point when you have a 38-year-old starting quarterback. Now, I know they're in a tough spot because they drafted the kid number 2. You can't just cut him. But at this point, now that he's the guy, you can bench him. That's the stubbornness that I just don't understand.
Exactly. And one more quick note, and then we'll get to the Eagles. I promise, Eagle fans. Pretty good source tied to the Jets told me the main reason that Zach Wilson was retained to be the backup quarterback of the Jets this year was Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah.
that Rodgers liked him and thought he could take him under his wing and teach him and make him a better guy. Well, you can't if you can't walk. I know he's out there throwing passes before games, but he's not there every day watching.
By the way, that drives me crazy as well. He's not close to coming back. He torn his Achilles. Everybody can walk. He can throw the ball 50 yards in his sleep without his legs. He's not close to coming back.
But by the way, it's another example of not letting players dictate and be GMs because
he's Aaron Rodgers. They needed him desperately. They were going to do whatever.
I know, but it's another example for fans who think that just because you play or played that you know more than everybody.
That's true.
This is another example of players being too close to some of these guys and not having an idea of this guy.
Oh, yeah. That had been going on in Green Bay for years. He wanted to keep guys, and the Packers are like, this guy's not that good. And, you have this butting of the heads. And, but, you live with it with that kind of Hall of Fame talent. It's gone bad. But back to the Eagles. We were talking about expectations, Mike, so we'll throw that one at you. Go back to week 1, your expectations for this team versus the bye week. Have they risen? Have they gone down? Are they the same? Where are they?
Well, then I think at the beginning of the year, Super Bowl team, you can't ever guarantee a Super Bowl or say this team is going to win the Super Bowl. But I think if they fall short of getting to that game again and giving themselves a chance to win it, you would be disappointed. And there's nothing that has happened this year that has changed that goal. Is this team has to get back to a Super Bowl and win a Super Bowl. I mean, if you get to a Super Bowl, is it a disappointment to lose the game? Sure. Is it a disappointing season? I don't think if you make the Super Bowl and lose, you're a disappointment. But I think the expectation is this team's a Super Bowl team. Nothing has happened. The only thing that you would say
But here's where I said I didn't expect him. I said they're a Super Bowl contender. I knew they were going to be a really good team, but I thought it would get incrementally better. I thought they'd have some hiccups because of the change of the coordinators, the 5 new defensive starters, yada, 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 all that stuff. I thought it was going to be more difficult. So at this stage, they're a little bit ahead of where I thought they would be.
Yeah, and I think, though, they've been going through the speed bumps and winning at the same time. They are still incrementally kind of working their way, but their results have still been victories as opposed to working their way. And there's a hiccup here. They had the hiccup against the Jets, which was uncharacteristic. But I think what we're learning about this team that's different from last year, and that doesn't mean last year didn't have this gene in them, but I think this year's team has this. If you want to beat us, you're going to have to take off the gloves and fight us. We will scrap with you, Miami, and you don't want to scrap with us. And Miami said, no, we don't. You got us. Same with Dallas. I mean, in the end, Dallas went toe-to-toe with you, but they don't have the knockout punch to beat you yet. We talked about it last week. What's the difference between the two teams? The attention to detail, the mental toughness.
Situational football,
right.
Dak
They
Prescott.
lack that area. Yeah. Dallas lacks the attention to detail, to step out of bounds of the 2-point conversion, to not spike the football, to take a delay, the game penalty. The tight end, you can say, well, Blankenship got there a little early. Okay, by any means, by the way, any NFL fan should not want that to be called pass interference. The guy caught the freaking ball, whether there was a guy kind of tagging. The guy ran the route short. That's what happened. He ran the route short, and he got tackled short of the goal line. If he runs the route, it doesn't matter that Blankenship was hanging on his back. If he caught the ball, he would have been in the end zone, but he wasn't. The lack of attention to detail. So the Eagles say, if you want to beat us, you are going to have to get out of your comfort zone. And that's who they are right now. And there's not a lot of teams that I can think of that want to get out of their comfort zone. The teams want to win their style. They don't want to win the Eagles style. And they're one of the very, very few. The Bengals, I think, are a good team down the road. Kansas City, we know, is pretty solid.
Ravens.
The Ravens are a team that might want to, I was going to say, the Ravens are the one team that might want to play where they stand in the cage with you and go, let's go. Let's scrap.
Agreed on all fronts there. The Ravens are playing damn good football right now. I I gave a Ruben Frank stat earlier about the Eagles not blowing anybody out, win by 14 plus points at any given game. The only team in the last 23 years to be 8-0 or 9-0 or 8-1 and not have a blowout victory on their resume. And I asked John what he thought that meant from it. More particular to the Philadelphia Eagles stat here, and I looked this one up myself last night. Last year's season, including 3 playoff games, which includes the Super Bowl, of course, 17 games and 3 playoff games. How many times do you think Jaylen Hurts rushed for 50 or more yards in 20 games last year, Mike Gill?
Man, that's a good question. Probably 6.
How about 8?
Okay, yeah.
8 games of over 50 yards. Well, we're 9 games into the season, so if they play 20 again, we're almost to the halfway mark if they go to the Super Bowl. How many times did Jaylen Hurts run for over 50 yards?
Maybe 1.
Once.
Yeah.
So he's just not running. Now, we can chalk it up to the injury of late for sure. He doesn't want to talk about it, but you can all see that the knee is bothering him, and they admit that he's got a knee issue. But even prior to that, he just wasn't running with the reckless abandon that he did last year. Was it a team decision? Was it a Jaylen decision? Does that really even matter? He's just not doing it. And part of the effectiveness of the Eagles last year, the Miles Sanders led running game, was Jaylen Hurts because he keeps the defense honest. Let's say these 13 days, whatever it is, to give him a major reprieve and his knee is better and he doesn't re-injure it going forward. Is the return of Jaylen, the 50-plus yard runner, ever going to come this year for the Philadelphia Eagles?
Oh, man, that's a good question because it's like, is he not doing it because of the injury? Is that factored into why he has kind of reeled it back in? Do you take Sirianni for his word and said, well, that's why he made the money. That's what makes Jaylen. Well, you're not using him the same way. That's evident. You just mapped out the stats. So have they actually reeled him back? I think this stretch of 5 games will be interesting to see where that knee is when he comes out. And then you're playing a stretch of games where really you can seal this number 1 seed. If you can get through these 5 games, you can pretty much put it out of reach. So I don't have any evidence to say, yeah, all of a sudden he's going to start being the Jaylen Hurts that we saw last year. But will the playoffs, when they get to the playoff level, then the inhibitions kind of go out the window? That's where I think I'm kind of intrigued.
I think that was the plan.
Right. To say, hey, if they're like the other day, it's 3rd and 7, I guess it was. This is in that 4th quarter stretch of just awful offense. He takes off and, it goes to it's 2nd and 8. He runs for 5 yards. It's 3rd and 3. Last year I feel like he would have lowered himself.
Well, I think there are 2 different points to it. I think early in the season, it's different than right now. Right now, he's not doing it because he's hurt.
Right.
Early in the season, he was scaled back. He was
still trepidatious about.
Yeah.
Last year, he's getting that first down, and this year and then they end up throwing that pass down the sideline, which I said, you've got the best offensive line. You've already shown on your own 30-yard line you're going to go for it to get the yard. Now, you might say they might not go for it this time around because if you give Dallas the ball, they're on the 30-some yard line with a chance to win the game. But if you run the ball and it's 3rd and 3, you get 2 yards, you got that tush push. He always says it's 1st and 9. Instead, they threw that ball, and that to me is kind of like
I just think they need the threat back. They need the threat. Yep. I don't even care about the number.
Yes.
I don't care about the number. If they have the threat, DeAndre Swift turns back into what most fans think he is. Without the threat, he's just a guy running the football.
Yeah, because this offensive run game is not a traditional run game of, hey, we're going to turn around. It's very predicated on Hurts being a part of the run game. Well, he's not. So he's hurting everybody else's ability to do things. I would ask you guys, Goddard's out. Do they keep in the tight end to help block a little bit more and try to help that run game get going?
Yeah, if Stoll's going to be playing, that's what Stoll does best.
Yeah, I mean, Stoll, but I just don't think they can run the ball traditionally.
Right. Well, just adding another, because now you're almost saying, I don't really need the tight end to be a part of the route tree. we'll just keep him kind of. I mean, you want Goddard to be a part of the route tree. Now, Goddard's a very good blocker too, by the way. But a lot of times you don't want to. I don't want to say
you want him
in that role. But now you don't really care if Jack Stoll is not going out for a pass or not.
In some ways, it makes it easier because the Eagles want to be an 11 personnel team, and now they only have one tight end, so they don't have to worry about it. They can just play
Big Albert
receivers.
Big Albert Owe coming up next week.
Julio Jones, empty sets. That's what they want to do anyway.
Jordan Matthews getting a tight end job.
And speaking of threat, the return of Quez is imminent. The threat of Quez stretching the defense. Oh my God! Watch the Eagle take off.
They did. By the way, the Eagles mentioned when they were talking at the trade deadline. The Eagles did mention Quez. That they have a bit of a roster crunch coming up, and obviously Cam Jurgens. They already put Julio on Justin Evans, and they mentioned Quez Watkins. That's just for you, Jody.
Yeah, the threat. I agree wholeheartedly with you on the Jaylen threat. If he's not part of the threat, the Eagle running game just doesn't run as effectively. When I say the running game, I'm not even talking Jaylen himself. I'm talking the running backs. The threat of Quez Watkins as imagined by Nick Sirianni. Yeah, sorry, Coach. I'm just not buying. All right, so no football, no Eagles football. And you're bad-mouthing the NFL product up and down, Gil. What the hell are you doing at 1 o'clock on Sunday?
I haven't looked at the college basketball schedule yet. I know the Sixers played last Saturday.
Mike Gill's going to be betting on Monmouth against whoever they're playing.
What happened to my guy Kelly Oubre in that last game? I had him as a top 10 player of the NBA until that last game.
Hey, that's the thing with the Sixers, man. They don't need Oubre to score 20 every night.
I need him to score 20.
Yeah. Oh, guess what? He wrecked my 9-legger. He was the one guy that didn't show up. I would have not been sitting here. I would have had a nice piece of change sitting on a beach somewhere had he scored 17 and a half or more.
I was going to say, what was the Kelly Oubre over-under number?
Over-under 17 and a half.
Oh, you got sucked in by those first couple of games.
By the way, there is a good 1 o'clock. San Francisco-Jacksonville.
Yeah, San Francisco-Jacksonville is the game we have on the radio. I know that game's on there. I know the Giants play Dallas this week. That's a bad game. I didn't look at the schedule. On Wednesdays, I do a segment where I look at the schedule for the first.
Giants are the worst team in football, by the way.
They're really bad. They're really bad. The Giants, it's amazing. I was talking about this yesterday. Last year, they finally get a taste. They're 9-8. They win a playoff game. You feel like, okay.
Worst thing that happened to them.
And then
thing that happened to them.
And then
and guys like Mike Gill are not even giving them enough credit. Giants were 9-7-1 last year, Gil. They did not lose 8 games. They had that all-important tie that got them to 9-7, that made them think they were better than they were even before they got to Minnesota. And then they just kind of wrote off the fact that the Eagles.
Maybe Tommy DeVito turns it around. Don Bosco Prep's own Tommy DeVito.
That's like the Ben DiNucci thing. It was like somebody in the Giants organization's brother, the coach at that high school.
They went to a Don Bosco Prep game back in the day. It's like St. Joe's Prep here.
You know, I'd like to see play for the Giants. Chris Sims. He's another high school Jersey star quarterback. Get him out there. Get killed.
There's a great spot. There's a great spot in this new USFL XFL merger for the Tommy DeVitos of the world. And quite frankly, I'm not sure he's starting in that league either.
Hey, be careful bad-mouthing the USFL because I did that about the Cowboy kicker, and the guy has.
I like the spring football, and I've been saying merge the two. I'm actually
one league. I like spring football
too, that they are only taking 12 teams. They're not including all the cities.
Yeah, but that's the Rock is not giving up his piece. So the XFL is good. The USFL is going to sell.
I think it's an 8-4 split. I think there's 8 XFL teams and 4 USFL teams.
I think it's the opposite. I think it's all 8. Yeah, I think it's 4 XFL, 8 USFL.
Rock's not going to be happy about that.
And by the way,
he wants to keep his fingers in that pot.
I think Rock wants to get the hell away from it.
You think so?
Yes.
I think he loves doing those spots on Sports Center. With the guys and
I don't think he likes
live their dream and stuff like that. Rock eats that crap up.
I don't think he likes losing money. He remembers when he had $7 in his pocket I don't think he likes.
Yeah. Oh, wait. We need to start a GoFundMe page for The Rock.
No.
I don't think so.
Well, that's the thing about rich people. They don't like losing money when it starts happening.
We'll see how that merger goes. All right, Mike Gill, thank you for putting up with my getting off on a tangent for A, before you got on, and then B, with the Jets. When we were on here, you handled it well, my friend. We will talk to you again next week. Go Tigers. That's Princeton I'm talking about. Go Tigers.
At Mike Gill Show on X, 97.3, the Sports Bash. I'll be on there later, I think.
If you didn't get enough of Mike Gill and John McMullen and you want to get the interloper Jody
Can't get
McDonald
enough
out of it, you got to listen to Mike Gill's show this afternoon on 97.
Do it.
Thanks, Mike.
Do it.
Appreciate it.
See you guys.
All right, McMullen and McDonald, Mac coming back. We've got Brooks Cubina, the new Eagles beat reporter for The Athletic. Johnny Mac was able to wrangle him yesterday. Never had him on the show before. Looking forward to getting his take.
Yeah, welcome them. Be nice, people of Philadelphia. Yeah.
Oh, you think the guys on the stream are gonna?
No,
because he's a newbie.
I have no idea.
Yeah, they like Gill on the stream. Nobody ever badmouths him. They badmouth me. To a lesser extent, they badmouth you. But they like Gill. He's a popular guy. Maybe it's the T-shirts. I got a plain black T-shirt on. Maybe I got to get a college T-shirt. All right, Johnny Mac, Jody Mac coming back. We still got plenty of Birds 365 coming your way.
If you own a company and you're not producing a podcast, you're missing out. The public consumes messaging when they're ready. Join the professional podcast network of companies and let JAKIB Media Partners put you in the podcast arena. Come to our professional studio or we'll come to your place of business and professionally produce your company podcast. Call JAKIB Media right now at 267-261-3428. 267-261-3428.
My name is Dr. Bruce Grosinger, and I'm the medical director of Philadelphia PRP and Stem Cell Institute. I'm reaching out to those who suffer from spine and joint pain. We use treatment methods that require no surgery, no scalpel, no drugs.
Running, walking, or whatever your desires are, Dr. Grosinger is where you need to come.
You can benefit from the same PRP and stem cell treatment as Wilbert Montgomery. Call us now at 610-222-5675.
We're here to show you a better way to spend your state income taxes and get the money to where it's needed to most to the thousands of qualified kids.
What we like about Blocks is they really know where the need is.
This program ensures that their dollars come 100% into these kids for their tuition assistance.
If you are able, Blocks makes the EITC piece go very quickly and very smoothly.
Turn your PA state tax liability into need-based scholarships and receive a 90% tax credit.
Win and save this baseball season from Colony Pools and Power Washing, a local company serving Delaware, Delco, and Chester County since 1970. Are you tired of looking at your green house? Is your roof, siding, deck stained green from algae and mold? Let the experts pressure wash your home and take the pressure off of you. Win with Colony Pools and Power Washing. Call them now at 302-762-2250. That's 302-762-2250.
EAGLES, Eagles.
McMullen and McDonald here with you on Birds 365. We still got 50 minutes left to rock and roll. Hope to punch up a new guest here. We have not had him on as part of the show before. We're going to get him up here waiting to punch him in here. Don't know what the issue is, but Brooks Cubina covers the Eagles now.
Yeah, let's punch him in early, Xander. There we
Pretty
go.
athletic.
Brooks.
Hey, what's going on?
Oh shoot, that's right. What am I? It's my bad. I'm going to a going out of order of the breaks here and everything. But as long as we got Brooks, we might as well punch him up. Thank you for that, Zander. I apologize. Brooks, here's the first question I have for you.
Yeah.
Has John McMullen spilled coffee on you yet? Since you made it to the beat, have you had an incident with John McMullen in the press box?
I call it the incident once, Brooks. Once in my life, I spilled coffee in the press box. And by the way, it was all friendly fire to me. It didn't affect anybody else. But Jody will never let me forget it.
Well, then I guess I just haven't been fully
and I wasn't
indoctrinated.
there. But come on, Kratz throws you
One
on the
time.
fridge.
One time.
Your Delaware guy.
So
throw you on the
just
fridge. I'm not
understand
alone.
that if you make one mistake, you will never hear the end of it.
That's Birds 365. We both cling to each other's mistakes all the time. But we're not going to do that to you, Brooks, because we're very much looking forward to talking to you. Thanks for jumping on today. Johnny asked you to come on the show. Thank you for saying yes. I would have asked you to come on the show. Rick Saratella suggested, hey, you got to get Brooks on. He's very good. And I said, yeah, send me his number and I'll reach out to him. And Saratella just never sent me your number. So if you're wondering why you had to wait to get on Birds 365, blame Rick Saratella, not me or John. Okay.
All right. Yeah. No, I need to hit Rick up. I know we're neighbors now. It's been a couple of years since we've been able to hang out really. So hopefully he's not the one to spill coffee on people either.
But we're also we're also John McClain, John, friend of the show as well. So Brooks comes from Houston, for those who don't know. So old Houston Texans action reporter. Tamika Ryan's old friend here in Philadelphia. But yeah, we're an Eagles show, so we'll keep it there. You've only been here for a few weeks. What are your first impressions of Nick Sirianni, this organization, and what they're doing right now?
Yeah, I mean, watching Sunday's game, I think, was a really good introduction to what this team has been through this season. I mean, watching them go up and see the strength of their offense through Jaylen Hurts, but also see some of the weakness on the defensive side. They've struggled with Avonte Maddox gone in the slot, and seeing CeeDee Lamb put up almost 200 yards and trying to make things work on that end, and then for them to still find a way to win. That seems to be a part of what this Eagles team has done over the season. Leading into the week, I rewatched every game to try and get a sense of where this team was, and it seemed like games like the Commanders, games like the Vikings, that's kind of how this season's gone for them so far. And getting into the locker room, I covered the Texans for 3 seasons. That was a team that was constantly rebuilding, trying to build an identity that we're starting to see now. Sunday's game is kind of a fun game between average teams, the Texans taking off and winning that one late against the Buccaneers. But this locker room, you see the sense of people who have full confidence in themselves and what they're about and where they're going. And, that's there's a difference in that from team to team. And from Sirianni, seeing him a couple of times, getting a chance to introduce myself to him, another coach who has confidence in what he's doing and how he calls games, where he's at, and his openness in talking about some parts of what they were trying to accomplish. And, every coach that I've ever covered is not always going to talk about injuries. So that's nothing new to me. Jaylen Hurts and how he's handled that too is no surprise to me either. But you just see a team that has that confidence in itself. And it's interesting. After the game, I went up and I talked to a bunch of players about like, hey, you guys are just used to stressful games. And AJ Brown was the funniest about it. He's like, yeah, man, it's got my nerves, man. Like they want to win in a different way. And I think there are key pieces to that in the second half of the season to where they might be able to change that, getting Bradley Roby back. He's said on Twitter that responding to a fan that he'd be back after the bye. So having him there at nickel safety might do some help there. He played pretty well in the 2 games that he was there. So still have tons to learn about this team. I'm doing that every day, just a little bit, a little push every day to try and get better on this. So it's been enjoy and I've enjoyed it so far.
Let's take a step back here. You mentioned you did the Texans for a while. Were you there in 2020 when Deshaun Watson had his superior year?
I was not. I was covering LSU at the time.
I wanted to see if you could comp Deshaun Watson. I know nobody wants to comp anybody Deshaun Watson because of things off the football field. And, oh, by the way, he's only been okay since he got back on the football field. But in 2020, he was right there with any other good young quarterback in the National Football League. And that's why the Cleveland Browns were willing to go to the lengths they went to acquire him. I was wondering if there was a comp there between Deshaun Watson, where he's at, and this would be a relatively similar place in his career for Jaylen Hurts. If you didn't see Deshaun that year, then forget my question. All right, so you're getting to know the Eagles, you're getting to know the guys, you're getting to know everything about this organization. How about the fans? You've also been in other NFL stadiums. You're seeing how the fans react both when the games are ongoing and when the games aren't ongoing. What do you think about the Philadelphia Eagle fan base?
Yeah, it's been really interesting and exciting in the city because I showed up. Let's see, and I can see I got all this light on my face. I'm going to move over this way, but when I first got here, the Phillies had just exited the playoffs, and it was like a morgue the first day, walking around, seeing people like somebody just killed their dog.
Yeah,
and it was immediate transition from Phillies to Eagles. It was seeing. I went for a run. I live in town. Whenever I wanted to move up quick. I accepted the job and wrote my last story for the Houston Chronicle and got up here within 10 days. So drove 30 hours across the country, and I wanted to make that transition quick. So I'm actually living with a couple of locals, and really wanted to get ingrained to the city, get to understand it, get to see it. And without them, I'd be lost. But we showed me around all the sites, and it seemed like everybody's talking about the Eagles. Everybody's wearing a shirt, a hat, like pants even. I went Sunday morning. I woke up and they were downstairs, and their neighbors came over and they were wearing their Eagles gear. Someone knocked on the door, opened up. It wasn't hello, good morning. It was go Birds.
Go Birds.
It was everybody does that, and I went for another run that morning, and everybody's talking about them. And I went to a bar on a Sunday night a couple of Sundays ago, whenever I finally got into town, and sometimes you don't. Sometimes when somebody asks you what you do in the media business, you'll probably get this. Sometimes you say accountant, so you don't have to say anything else.
Yes, often.
But
often.
I was like, yeah, I'm new to town, and I'm covering the Eagles, and they're like,
oh, yeah.
Everybody in the bar.
You're not leaving that table, bro.
But
question number 476.
Yeah.
Before you go,
right, exactly, and but the sense that everybody got to me, and like a lot of people have actually reached out through Twitter, through DMs, and some of the comment sections on my introduction article. The passion's there. They're very, like, people want sincerity, and I try to be that. And whenever I was responding to some people, they were like, "Hey, look, Philly people, they're tough up front, but once you're in for life." So I can see how I went and walked the tailgate before the game on Sunday, and it's a really energized a group. So, like, obviously the Eagles are good, times are good, going from the Phillies to the Eagles, and it's a city that I've always kept an eye on my whole life. So it's really fun to get a chance to live here, to cover this team. And I know the more that I get to know Philly, the more I get to know the Eagles, because I really believe a team is intrinsically tied to the identity of its city, and vice versa. So it's only been a week and a half, but the more I get into these things, I really hope to know more about it.
Yeah. Big 4-for-4 city. That's a big thing here, Brooks. So even the athletes, I playfully called Nick Sirianni the pander in chief. he had the Phillies shirt on.
He did.
Zoom this week. It's a very passionate sports city, as you have quickly gotten to see. And the Eagles are the top dogs, always number one, football city first and foremost. And they've been on quite a 2-season run here, 27 consecutive regular season weeks we're at. They've had either the best record in the NFL or tied for the best record. But this season, Brooks, the style points haven't been there. And some people are disappointed. How do you get disappointed, do you think, over an 8-1 team in a league kind of defined by parity? And you've been around a rebuilding team.
Well, it's about relativity, right? If you have expectations, are things meeting your expectations? So, covering the Texans, before that, I covered LSU, and LSU, I covered them when they won the national championship with Joe Burrow, and the year after that, where things went very poorly on the field. People's fan bases' expectations change whenever you're going through a rebuild. Sometimes people go into protective dormancy and say, you know what, I'll turn on whenever I don't have to hit my head against the wall. And then whenever they're winning, you start to see, okay, I expect them to win. And the offense this year, I feel, has definitely met the expectations and in some ways exceeded it. I mean, A.J. Brown's last month was absolutely amazing. And it could be if it weren't for Tyreek Hill, he'd probably lead the NFL and maybe get close to some of the records that are out there. And Jaylen Hurts, how he's worked through his knee injury the last couple of weeks, they've still been able to perform. I think it's the defense really where you start wondering, okay, well, Jonathan Gannon moves on to a head coaching job. You bring in Sean Desai, who had a great reputation and worked with Pete Carroll in Seattle, knew some of the players on staff, comes in, and they've been a middling defense in terms of a lot of the statistics, and they have dealt with injuries, but their pass rush is consistently getting to the quarterback, and they haven't yet been able to capitalize on that fully. I think Sunday's game was just another way of replicating that. They got to Dak Prescott often, but they were able to overcome long third downs, long second downs, still get into the goal line situations and score touchdowns. And when you see a team that's winning 8-1, yeah, they're winning, but I think every fan is sitting in there in their gut thinking, oh, is this going to be the time where they blow it? Dak Prescott's on our 5. Is Josh Sweat always going to get a sack in this situation? Say you're playing the Chiefs again in a couple of weeks. Is Pat Mahomes not going to capitalize on that situation? So I think every fan is going to have something inside where they're always thinking about the worst possible outcome. And the more I get to know Philly fans, it seems like that's part of their experience as a fan over the last how many years they've been watching this team. So I think expectations change, and until they're just dominating every play, which never fully happens.
Never happens.
So it's not all that surprising.
You could give us an interesting perspective on this, because I know both my stance and John's stance on this one. Off the game last week and the way that it ended and the final score, everything, all included into one big pile. Watching a couple of the national talk shows and the like, I got a little of this on my WIP show. Well, they're talking about the Cowboys. The Cowboys lost. Why aren't they talking about the Eagles on a national television show? Disrespect to the Eagles. And I try to explain to them, it's not a disrespect of the Eagles. It's an overhyping of the Dallas Cowboys. And it's only been going on forever. So you finally caught up with, they're talking about the Dallas Cowboys more than they should have. Where the hell you been for the last 25 years? But that's the way the national media does things.
Yeah. Well,
what happened with that game? I've seen guys say, oh, Dak showed that he can get it done in a big spot. I know he threw for a lot of yards. He put up some gaudy numbers, but then again, he got the ball at the 6-yard line with 20 seconds to go, and they actually went backwards.
Yeah,
do you feel more confident or less confident about Dak Prescott after watching that game on Sunday?
Well, I haven't watched the Cowboys all that closely.
Okay.
Getting in, covering the Texans last year, they played the Cowboys, and I saw Dak Prescott drive the field for a game-winning touchdown against them. But then again, I mean, that was the Texans of last year who went 3-13-1. So this year, watching the Eagles, I've been studying mostly of them, and seeing the Cowboys earlier this year, they've dominated in some spots. They've been dominated in others, namely the 49ers game. Whenever you're a quarterback and you're expected to push a team into a deep playoff run, I know the Cowboys fan base and the Cowboys themselves as an organization, they probably are sick and tired of hearing about people saying, oh, they can't make that Super Bowl push. This isn't the 90s anymore. Dak's not the guy. No matter how much the organization has, invested in him and shown support for him, that the questions are still there. I mean, there's good things to being constantly bloviated in the national media because people are talking about you, which means there's at least attention on what you're doing. But in the same sense that you were asking me earlier about expectations from the Eagles fan base, well, expectations from everybody just constantly being in the light and never ultimately performing. That's got to be something tough to ignore as a player. So, just in that game, from watching what Dak did throughout that game, there were situations where they had to constantly overcome a pass rush that's very good, and they did that in key spots. They just didn't. You can't count on that to happen reliably. So, parts of the offensive game plan for the Cowboys to be able to shore up their pass protection, that's the thing they take away going forward. They'll play the Eagles again later on this year. Are they able to shore up those things? Because just odds are they're going to get to you, and they are going to keep you to get off the field in one of those spots. So there are resiliencies that quarterbacks show. I thought Dak Prescott showed that plenty. CeeDee Lamb, they found the ways to break through on those times, and it stopped because on that sack with Josh Sweat, that's when Darius Slay moved inside and went on Lamb.
Yeah.
And if the Eagles find a way to shore up that issue, what then do the Cowboys do in response? So I know that's kind of maybe not the full answer you were expecting, but like that's kind of how I look at that, and we'll see how that works out later on in the season for him.
You mentioned Slay moving inside, and that was interesting to me, Brooks, because he doesn't play there often. Obviously, the Eagles had a very difficult time dealing with CeeDee Lamb, who's a very good receiver. Really, you're throwing Eli Ricks in there, Sidney Brown, both rookie players. Every time they targeted them, they completed the football. When you see that from a coaching staff, is that positive that you're willing to be malleable in the biggest moment of a game, or are you kind of a little bit in the other direction saying, well, what are we doing here? Because if you move Slay inside, that affects Eli Ricks as well, because he's not used to playing outside, at least in this particular game. And all of a sudden you're jumbling up at the biggest spot of the game. How do you sort of take that?
Yeah, well, it's probably both. You're sitting there in the situation. You're like, okay, well, at least I have my top guy being willing to do anything to win. But Nick Sirianni said it himself earlier this week. There are ways in the defense that's just not going to be sustainable long term. You don't have one of your best defensive players who's supposed to be your lockdown guy on the outside edge trying to play slot. That's not the way a defense is materialized. So I think those things work out over time if they are able to get to work Bradley Roby back in the lineup. Because I mean, I was talking about this with Sidney Brown, who's also played nickel this year, and he got a couple of times during that game too. Whenever Avonte Maddox went down, they weren't expecting to play nickel this year. They've been working in at safety, so they had to make an adaptation. Obviously, it's been 6 games to this point, so you'd expect to see a little bit more results at this point. But you're looking at the because I saw lots of comments on the story I wrote, which had a lot to do with that matchup on Sunday, and people are like, well, why didn't they just do this earlier in the game? This wasn't 98% of the game. They let CeeDee Lamb go all over them. But if Eli Ricks is you have to have the question, okay, is Eli Ricks at corner and Darius Slay at nickel better than the alternative? And I don't think that's true. Whenever you look at the rest of the game that they have on the schedule, you see like the Chiefs, the Bills, the 49ers, the Cowboys again. How many of those are 3 deep at wide receiver? Where are the guys that are coming into the middle? There are different ways that you can work through a secondary and how they trade off, how they handle certain players. And there were times where Ricks thought that he had help outside. There was a play towards the beginning of the fourth quarter. And I was talking to him. He said, like, yeah, he had did this slant and go instead of a slant. And I thought I had help this way. That's rookies that's rookie mistakes. That's things that they're having to work with, and you have to understand as a defensive coach too. And they know that I'm barely anybody, right? So like they have to be able to support them in those situations too. So, I think whenever you have experience in Roby coming back, like he's gonna know that those kind of situations aren't going to be as big of a problem. So I don't think the Eagles want that to be a long-term thing where they're sitting there saying, okay, we need to move Slay inside to lock down a guy. But now that they know it's an option, if it's a full-on emergency, you've got one in the chamber.
I got to get an expectations look from you because you're a new guy, just showed up.
I got all the projections.
Yes, we have preconceived notions, certainly, of the Eagles, having followed them for years, decades, and the like. Eagles offensive line.
Mm-hmm.
First impression. Brooks, what do you got?
Well, Sunday was the first time I got to see the brotherly love, the brotherly shove, in person. And it's crazy to me. And I know I'm not the first, I'm probably like the 3,000th person to start talking about this, but like you can use that to prevent a safety, convert a 4th down, 3rd down. They did it within their own 30 to start the game.
Yep.
You don't do that unless your offensive line is going to be able to get some push. I know they get a little bit more than that, but that's my first impression. The other is the very first thing I sat down and studied this team, because the Texans, their offensive line has been just in shambles because of the injuries, the rotations, all that stuff. They've fielded a different lineup, and I was like, oh look, hey, that's what it's like to have a consistent lineup every week. I mean, that must be kind of nice. And I know they've had to have some a change at right guard recently, and Cam Jurgens practiced last week, and it'd probably be the expectation that after a bye week that he'd be potentially back in the lineup. So just seeing them in action, there are going to get the players, good defensive players get through good offensive line. Micah Parsons was a problem sometimes on Sunday.
Yes, he was.
Talking to Jordan Mailata, part of having a good offensive line, I think some coaches are like, okay, well, they have experience, they have cohesion. Let's try a few different things. This specific game plan, I know that they have good communication. They've been together for a long time, so maybe we can try this. There were several sacks. I think three sacks in the first half on Jaylen Hurts, including the one where he got hit on the knee. And I asked Jordan what happened in the second half, and he's just like, we just threw out the game plan in the first half and just made it simple. He's like, I'm just going to focus on Micah Parsons and blocking Micah Parsons, and everybody else, we're just going to simplify this. And the protection was much better. They scored 2 touchdowns to start the third quarter, and then the fourth quarter, I mean, they had 3 drives and I think only about 22 yards. So that's a problem. But my impression was that they have enough cohesion to try new things, and also they're good enough to just say, hey, screw it, we're going to just make this simple and fix it. So those are the things that make up a good offense, because you don't have to adapt your scheme in order to make up for the lacks and the timing that the quarterback's not going to have. So every team from college that I've covered to high school that I've covered, they all say we got to win in the trenches. Well, the Eagles have one of the best offensive lines. They have one of the best defensive lines. That's a large percentage of why they're 8-1 right now. And with Josh Sweat winning the game in a lot of ways, that's another proof of that as well.
When you got into sports, covering sports, Brooks, did you ever think you would cover a center that is a legitimate superstar? And my wife, by the way, we're 93 minutes into the show. I haven't mentioned it yet. Jason Kelce, runner-up for People Magazine's Sexiest Man of the Year award. That's the center of the Philadelphia Eagles. What's your first impressions of Jason Kelce? Incredibly entertaining guy, charismatic. It's unbelievable.
Well, you walk into a locker room and you're starting to understand how the dynamic is, how people talk. And a mentor of mine told me sometimes the best thing to do is to go up and just see what they want to talk about. But
is that McLean?
No. But there was a lot of things I learned from him. But seeing how the whole media flocks to Jason Kelce is respect in a lot of ways, and knowing that he's, he one is either insightful, a good quote, or all the things that you get out of somebody. So I went up and I introduced myself a little bit, and it's not surprising to me that a center can have that impact, because I've covered some really good centers over my time as a career, like starting even at LSU, Lloyd Cushenberry. I know I'm just saying names that people probably don't know very well.
I know Lloyd. Yeah.
But he was a guy that jumped into, had a really good personality, was a Baton Rouge kind of local guy. And that offensive line won the award for best offensive line that year. So the offensive line to me is,
they're always a good,
the most entertaining group.
Lane's a great quote. Landon's, Jordan's phenomenal. Jordan Mailata, as you've learned.
Yeah, I mean, Mailata has he's got a guitar and a banjo next to his locker.
Yeah.
And we were talking about that for a little while. And I know they put out the Christmas album last year, and I'm wondering if there's going to be a second.
There is.
Oh, there is. It's already done.
It's ready to be released. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And they brought in Brother Kelce, which some Eagle fans aren't happy with, because they're tapping into outside sources. It should have stayed just Eagle. That's the feedback I get on my radio talk show. Shame on them
if they're going
bringing Travis
for
in.
Travis, you might as well go for the real musician in that relationship.
That's what I said. If he gets to bring in, guessing they're not going to be able to convince her to do a song on the arm. But
are they going to be serious about the music business, or are they not going to be serious about the music business?
Well, by the way, in all seriousness, I mean, that's got to be tough for the Kelce family, because Taylor is a Eagles fan. She grew up in Reading. Obviously, you got Travis.
Are you sure it still is, John?
Well, no, I'm not sure it still is. That's what I mean. There's a lot of back and forth in that one. The annual now Kelce Bowl. And of course, Donna Kelce has become a superstar in her own right. So a lot of Kelce's coming up, a lot of Kelce and Taylor Swift. But yeah, let's bring it back. All right. Brooks Cubina covers the Eagles for The Athletic at B Cubina. We're saying that right, by the way. Are we?
That's Cubina. Yeah.
Cubina. All right. Because it could go a couple ways. So I want to make sure we get
no,
that right.
Yes, that's good. It's check. So
I should have checked right away, but you live and learn. Joe Burrow, you mentioned him earlier.
Yeah.
Did you know when you're covering Joe Burrow was going to be Joe Burrow at the NFL level? Was that evident?
Whenever he went into the draft, I don't like always saying like, oh, I knew this, oh, I did this. You just kind of have a feeling. And the things that I had seen, the things that I had known, the people I talked about, the film that I'd watched, all of that, I was just like, if he has the career that he had here, he'll be in the Hall of Fame, because the way that he impacted LSU at the time, you just had to understand that was a team that had been cycling through quarterbacks, searching for an answer. They had all of these athletes and talent that they were just felt like they weren't tapping into. And here came Joe Burrow into town, who immediately won over the locker room. And I remember this 2018, they play Miami. It's a neutral site game at AT&T Stadium in Dallas or Arlington. And Miami, that's a top 10 game at the time. Before the game even began, there was an on-field fracas. They all just kind of swarmed together, not really a fight. Nobody's punching. They're just kind of shoving around. And then the pile emerges, and in the middle, it's Joe Burrow putting up the L for LSU. And he was somehow in the middle of that, like your quarterback is in there. And that, I think, part of what quarterbacks have to do, leaders have to do, is what Joe Burrow thought in his mind. Like, I need to prove myself to people, and then earn their trust, and then things worked out that way. And he was like that the entire time. The combination of Joe Brady after the 2018 season.
Joe Brady was all the hype.
They played Texas A&M for 7 overtimes. And I remember that game was the wildest game I've ever covered. But that was the first time that the LSU actually started spreading out a lot of the receivers, going less 12 personnel, using more up tempo. And they went into the offseason saying, you know what, This may be what we need to do. Joe Brady was a no-name staffer on the Saints who came in and did one presentation, and Ed Orgeron, the coach at the time, and the rest of the staff was like, you know what, maybe we need to hire this guy. So they brought him in, and I had this conversation with Joe Brady before that summer, and it was about protection because that was LSU's problem, giving up sacks. Joe Burrow had been hit a lot in 2018, and his idea was like, and it may not be all that enlightening to some people, but he was like, well, the more receivers you get out of the offense, if you use more use more pass catchers, you're actually going to give your quarterback more protection, because if you go 5-man protection, if you bring in a tight end, a running back to chip, you got 7 guys. You're not. What is LSU's strengths? They have tons of wide receivers. They had Justin Jefferson, Terrace Marshall, Jamar Chase. Why are we not putting them all out all the time? Because if we get them in routes, they're going to find a way to get open. Burrow gets rid of the ball quicker. There's your pass protection.
Yeah, Eagles use a lot of empty sets. Fans should pay attention to that because that's sort of their philosophy, although they have a great offensive line. But correct me, I believe Joe Burrow threw 60 touchdowns that year. Wasn't that the national championship year? I think he was 15-0 with 60 touchdowns. That might be the greatest college football season in history.
I think it's hard to argue. I think it's it was tough to be hyperbolic writing about that team. I think it was the best college football team in history. I think you think of when I know growing up in Texas and watching Texas USC in 2006, the Rose Bowl there, everybody talked about how much talent was on the field. The best group of talent in college football history, in my opinion, is whenever LSU and Alabama played together that year. 2 on one side, Joe Burrow on the other, the wide receivers both teams had, the defenders both teams had. I mean, it was just an incredible year. And then for the Bengals to recognize, okay, same situation, kind of what I was saying here with Joe Brady talking about the offense. They were thinking of drafting Penei Sewell, an offensive lineman, offensive tackle, to help Burrow, who had gone out for the season with his ACL injury. But they instead went with Jamar Chase and then immediately went on that Super Bowl run. You add a pass catcher, you add someone who can get open and help out and alleviate those situations. Things work out in their favor. So, I mean, no one was more competitive than Joe Burrow that I had seen at LSU. He would get pissed when people knew that he lost a ping pong match. You know, like he was. I talked to several of his friends for a long story, and they would play a video game at night. This is like in high school. And no, they'd play Risk. They played Risk, I think it was.
A game of Risk. Yeah.
Game of Risk, and he would lose, and he'd set it up again. They'd be playing all night. I think that was the game. But it was they'd play all night, and some guy just said, I don't even know who won. I went to bed. And there'd be moments when they're sitting out in the pool and he's just hitting the ball back and forth, and they'd spend the whole day because he wants to find out how many times they can hit it back and forth before it hits the water. They're like, Joe, like, can we do something else? Like it was a lot, like the little small things that make up for like the kind of, some people would say maybe too far in terms of how people dedicate themselves to the game or the competition level. That's sometimes what it takes. Someone who's got a little bit of that mentality. So the other thing about how he was going into the NFL was right before the draft, Peyton Manning reached out to him, and it was, he was going to, everybody knew he was going to go number 1 overall. It wasn't going to be any secret. And Manning told him, there's a reason why you're going number 1. The team there is not very good, and you're going to struggle at first, because Manning himself that year led the NFL in interceptions, got sacked a bunch.
Yeah.
And Burrow's perspective going into there was pretty healthy. And, just knowing patience and working through that. I saw that a lot in CJ Stroud too, for the games that I covered with the Texans this year.
Yeah, he's having a great year, by the way. CJ is doing, and last week, wow.
Because I think that's the thing. Is like Jaylen Hurts, I haven't gotten to know him all that well yet, but I can see from the success that he's had. It takes a good team, right? But people who are able to manage the outside expectations, but work comfortably within that, like, it doesn't mean you ignore it. You almost welcome it, but add it to what you have in yourself, and there's an easiness between how people interact with the players, their coaches. Like, it comes from confidence in yourself, and it comes off. It looks a lot easier than I think it is. And people, the three people that I've seen that, well, two so far, I'm just assuming that with Jaylen because of the success he's had, is Joe Burrow and CJ Stroud. So we'll see how this goes.
All right, to add to Brooks' point about that 2019 game between Alabama and LSU, I've got a brother-in-law who's an LSU grad. Now his kids go to LSU. They live in Baton Rouge, so it's all Tigers all the time. That particular game, too, that first-round draft picks, quarterback Burrow and Tua, running backs Najee Harris, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, wide receivers DeMar Chase, Jalen Waddle, Devontae Smith, Henry Ruggs, Jerry Jeudy, Justin Jefferson, others, Darryl Stingley, Jedrick Willis, Kavion Chason, Patrick Queen, Alex Leatherhead, Evan Neal. All first-round picks.
Yeah.
All of in two teams on one field at the same time. How many first-round picks is that? Unbelievable.
And how many of those now are contributing in a huge way? Because that was the other thing from Texas USC, a lot of first-round picks, but within 3-4 years, a lot of those guys were not huge contributors on their teams. So, like, it's pretty remarkable what, especially on the offensive end.
Agreed. All right, one last LSU question, and we appreciate you hopping on with us, Buck.
Yeah.
This year, they've got two wide receivers who have, I think, double-digit touchdowns. Neighbor and Thomas both have 10 or 11 touchdowns each. And, man, was Jaden Daniels. I watched the game last week before he got hurt. Friggin' he and Milroe just making plays with their legs and throwing the ball. It was a great quarterback showdown with those guys. LSU wide receivers. John knows that I'm not the biggest Quez Watkins fan in the world. The Eagles are not going to use a first-round pick on a wide receiver. They don't need to because they've got two star wide receivers. So it's got to be third round, fourth. Either one of these guys, they take the better of the two out of the mix because they'll go too early. The Eagles won't be able to touch them. Do you like both of those two guys, Neighbors and Thomas, and could one of them be available? I don't even know if they're draft eligible. One of those two guys fit here as the replacement for the Quez Watkins deep ball threat for the Eagles going forward.
Yeah, Neighbors is eligible for the draft, and it's interesting to think about this because I haven't really projected too far ahead for the Eagles. I mean, with the wide receiver situation, I've talked to NFL coaches and personnel folks before, and you really can't have enough wide receivers. And I mean, right now, as much of the riches they have in A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, their third leading receiver was Dallas Goedert. Now that he's out, you don't have any guy other than DeAndre Swift who has more than 150 receiving yards. So, I mean, having a third receiver helps. You know, if you want to go out there in 11 personnel, which they do a lot, that really puts pressures on defenses. And obviously, one of the big reasons they brought Julio Jones in, and even though he's late in his career, we'll see how much success he has as the season persists. But yeah, I don't think it's out of play to think of the Eagles going for a wide receiver in a first round situation, because I mean, look at what they did on the defensive line. They doubled up on that in consecutive years, and that's paying dividends.
Well, that's the problem with the Eagles. They're always going to default.
They're always going to go into the trench. When in doubt, dive into the trench.
Yeah.
Well, it's not a bad strategy in terms of how I've seen other teams and how they've worked. I mean, I'm just comparing it to what I've covered, right? So the Texans in the last couple of years, their offensive line, their defensive line, both of that a problem. They finally addressed those issues. Now they're 4-4, which is not 8-1, but they're going to have more success, I think, as they continue to build from within, which is what the Eagles have done. But the point being there is, think of where the depth is on this team and where it isn't. You obviously have Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown, but if you want to add another third receiver in a rookie contract situation, it's not a bad way to go. And it depends on what they do with their running back situation. You know, they do have DeAndre Swift under contract for this season, but they have shown that, okay, well, there are running backs in the market. You can bring in a new one and have the success to the par of what you had the year before. And they might believe they can get that from Swift again. It depends on what the market rate is. I think the running back market's going to surge this offseason. So we'll see how that works. And if they I don't think a first-round running back is
No,
probably in the cards.
not here.
But
No,
to your original question, I mean, I'm watching LSU. Yeah, those two guys, Neighbors especially, is going to be a first-round projection, and that's fitting for him. He was just coming in as I was leaving. He was a big recruit, but I've seen him come up big in a lot of situations. So I do wonder how that fits, though, when you look at how he would work with the Eagles, because I mean you've got AJ Brown, Devontae Smith. What's his role? Is he an inside guy? Is he an outside guy? I haven't looked into that much myself, but I think he's probably more probably in the slots that you'd be using AJ Brown, Devontae Smith. Now that being said, Brian Johnson, whoever, your offensive coaching staff, Nick Sirianni, they're going to make use of good players wherever they get them. But I do think depth adding there, you might want that.
Yeah.
I'm kind of speaking just in generalities at this point. I wish I had more to give you on LSU's end on those wide receivers.
I wish you were there for Brian Kelly, because I wanted to learn how you get that Southern accent so quickly. Bang.
Well, you probably need a little more training on that first one.
Practice. You need practice. That's how you get there. Brooks, we appreciate much you're coming on with us today. Now that we've developed this relationship and you see how important Birds 365 is to the coverage of the Philadelphia Eagles, you'll come back on again, won't you?
Yeah. No, I really appreciate this. And, it's been fun living here. And I thought I was going to come here and play it cool after, not really ever being to Philly all that much. But within 2 days, I had a cheesesteak and ran the Rocky Steps. So
there we
go.
That was
jumping right in.
I was that guy. So.
Have you had a second cheesesteak somewhere else other than where you had your first?
I had two. So
all right, compare and contrast. Give us the rating.
So I had Joe's, which was in my neighborhood. I'm living up in Fishtown, and that was fine. It was solid. And then there was one that was, I forget the name of it. It was just a late night one, grabbing it. I haven't really gone after some huge ones. I think my host, they were telling me Angelo's down on near the Italian market is a big favorite. So that's probably going to be the next.
And
there's a lot of good ones. I don't want to rate anybody. It could be potential sponsors down the line, so you never know.
and by the way, here's another thing you learn about Philly. Whatever you say, you're right and you're wrong at the same exact time. If someone agrees with you, of course you're right. You know it. You know better. If somebody disagrees with you, you're an idiot. Why would you say something like that? It's amazing here in Philadelphia. You can be right or wrong depending on who you're talking to.
Well, I think that's actually kind of philosophically probably closer to the truth. You can be right and wrong all the time.
And tell that to some of the Eagle fans. Well, Brooks, we appreciate you coming on with us today. We are definitely getting you back if you'd be good enough to jump back in with us. Thanks for doing it today.
Yeah, thanks, Jody. Thanks, John.
Thanks, Brooks.
Brooks Cubina from The Athletic, up from Houston, formerly from Baton Rouge. It seems like he fits right in here in Philly. Straight shooter. That's what we like about him, and we will have him back on again. All right, McMullen, McDonald, last segment coming your way. We will come back and put a bow on the show here on Birds 365.
Go to get your game on. Go for the beers. Go for the cheers. Go for the hit and the hits. Go for the stakes and the stakes. Go to get your parlay on. Go to get your party on. Go for the scene. Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean. Visit theoceanac.com to plan your visit.
At Pond Lehocky, we've recovered billions of dollars for our clients, and we're confident we can do the same for you. With over 250 years of combined courtroom experience, we've helped over 100,000 injured clients obtain some of the largest settlements in Pennsylvania. One conversation is all it takes to help you and your family get back on track. If you've been injured in an accident, give Pond Lehocky a call.
They're carving them up and good play calling along the way. First and goal at the 6.
On the field of life, First Trust Bank is there for you.
Champions on 3. 1, 2, 3.
Because Philadelphia dreams deserve a Philadelphia bank.
We're here to show you a better way to spend your state income taxes and get the money to where it's needed to most to the thousands of qualified kids.
What we like about Blocks is they really know where the need is.
This program ensures that their dollars come 100% into these kids for their tuition assistance.
If you are able, Blocks makes the EITC piece go very quickly and very smoothly.
Turn your PA state tax liability into need-based scholarships and receive a 90% tax credit.
Since 1977, it's always been about you, the community, at Rafferty Subaru. And through the Subaru Love Promise, we prove we care by supporting charities like So Good Now.
So Good Now helps kids in under-resourced areas by connecting them with student athletes to serve as mentors. We remove barriers so athletes can help youth in the corners of our communities where light and love are needed most.
When you choose Rafferty Subaru, you help organizations like So Good Now.
It's all about you at Rafferty Subaru.
Do you stream on a Roku, Fire Stick, Google TV, or Apple TV? Now you can watch 6ABC 24/7 with the 6ABC Philadelphia streaming app.
And the big story on Action News.
Search 6ABC Philadelphia and start streaming today.
EAGLES, Eagles.
All right, back. We're coming back to wrap up a Wednesday edition. Yes, we now have 11 days before the Eagles play again. Yeah, hopefully they start clicking off. Remember, the Eagles not only have the bye week this week, but don't return till Monday night affair against the Chiefs when they do come back. John, you're going to be able to get any info, any leakage on how the Eagles are going to handle Dallas Goedert? I know that they don't have to do anything. They'd probably be well advised to not make any decision or let information get out because it seems to be cutting edge on whether they will or won't need to put him on the IR. Remember, it's 4 games. It's not 4 weeks. They can't chalk up this week and go, yeah, it's one of the weeks.
Yeah.
It's got to be 4 games, so it's 5 weeks or whatever. You think you'll be able to get anything over the next couple of days as to just good speculation you can hang your hat on?
Not as far as, what they're going to do. I mean, that comes down to if they believe he's going to miss the 4 games. So I said to me, and again, that seems optimistic that he's going to be back in 4 weeks. But if he is, then you sort of say you don't need to put him on IR. But, the roster crunch, I would lean towards they need roster spots because they need spots for Justin Evans and they need spots for Cam Jurgens and they need a spot for Quez Watkins. At least they say they need a spot for Quez Watkins. Well, that's an easy one right there. You don't have to make a difficult decision. However, he's one of your best players. So if you think he's going to be back for that 4th game,
right, I'm
carrying him. I'm not just giving up a game, and this is the toughest part of the schedule. So it's really it's an Arshdenota decision, and he's the one who's going to be saying, and this might also be one of those issues where you have to see how it's coming along throughout that process, the 3rd, the 4th week, and see where he is. But I mean, that's an Arshdenota decision, and that's one of the most important people in this organization that few people talk about outside of this show. We bring him up every once in a while. He's the Eagles' chief medical officer, and he's the one. This ain't a Howie Roseman decision. This isn't a Nick Sirianni decision. This is a Arshdenota decision.
And oh, by the way, John, that 4th game, the one that's in question would be who?
Where are we? So we got Kansas City and then Buffalo and then San Francisco and then Dallas, right?
Oh, so it'd be Dallas again that they'd have to make that sitting on the fence decision on. Very interesting. I'm with you. It's going to be a medical decision more than anything else. All right, brother. Good show today. Thanks for lining Brooks up. Looking forward to talking to him again in the future. Thanks to Mike Gill for his college-wearing T-shirt contribution to today's show. We'll do it again tomorrow. Glenn McNaugh's going to jump in with us. We haven't had my radio Mac partner in a while.
Yes, Mac and Mac and Mac.
We'll triple Mac attack you tomorrow. So looking forward to that. You're in, right? I don't have to sweat you not showing up, do I?
No, day to day.
He is day to day.
I'm planning on it.
There's only one way for you to find out. And let me quickly say on the way out, you can hit the like button. If you're on the way out, before you go, hit the like button. If you like Brooks Cubina today, hit the like button. We need to upgrade our algorithm a little bit. No, you don't like me, but that's okay. Hit the like button because of Brooks today. And when we get Glenny Mac up here tomorrow, you can hit it again. So Mac and Mac will be back mañana. That's 2 and 2 from now.
You've been listening to Birds 365, the destination for the passionate Eagles football fan who bleeds green. If it's Eagles football, we're talking about it. Debate inside the locker room and guests that are some of the greatest football minds from around the region. We hope you enjoyed the show. We know we had a blast. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll be back soon. But in the meantime, hook up with us on social media at JAKIB Sports. See you next time on Birds 365.